Welcome to the Camera Shake Podcast, episode 64. And before we get into today's episode, let me just remind you that if you are listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can find our lovely faces in full Technicolor over on YouTube. Just hit youtube.com/camerashake. And once you're there, why don't you just hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, all of the good stuff that YouTubers usually tell you to do. But once you've done that, you can come back and listen to the rest on audio. How's that? Anyway, so let's get started. Episode 64, the Camera Shake Podcast. And today's special guest is none other than the multi-award-winning documentary wedding photographer, co-host of the Tog Pod podcast, photography speaker, and mental health ambassador, Alex Benyon. Alex, how are you?
I'm not doing too bad at all. Thank you very much, guys. How are you?
We are exhausted, but we're good.
Good. Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you for coming on. I can see you're by your empty shelves in the background that you're just in the middle of moving house.
Yes, literally. The house is packed. The removal men come first thing tomorrow morning, I feel absolutely shattered. But the end is in sight, and it's all going to be worth it.
I'll be honest. I thought that was an actual set.
Yeah,
it's my minimalist office.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everybody seems to be going minimalist these days.
Yeah. Apparently I'm not.
Well, I don't really know.
No,
I like clutter.
Yeah.
Clutter's a good thing.
What happens after every episode we film? Nick, why don't you just leave this out right in the middle of my living room?
Yeah, I mean, what's the point? we make these every week. I mean, why would you?
Because I can barely get out the door.
Well, there's a...
Still.
See, this is the thing. If we were filming this at my house, we would literally keep this set up for the whole week, and that'll be it.
It makes sense. I agree. I think that's the best way. Just live around it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you know how much trouble you'd be in?
Well, I mean, nothing would survive for like a week with my kids around.
No,
sure.
no, and the dog.
Yeah, no, maybe not such a good idea. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, again, thank you so much for coming onto the show, even though you're in the middle of moving. So I know that's going to be quite a stressful time.
No, so when I was a fan of the podcast, and some of my friends have been on, so like Tommy Reynolds, and I think Hannah Cousins as well has been on, and so to get invited, it was really, really nice, and I just hope I've got the mental capacity to be able to sort of give a good interview today, because like I say, I can't remember being this side. I've got a 3-year-old daughter as well, so bear with me if I suddenly just blank and stare off into the distance. I'm just having a very minor breakdown, but I'll be back on.
Yeah, it's hard. Moving house with kids is hard. That's what I found.
Can't be easy.
No. Luckily, we've got grandparents where we're moving to, so we've just shipped her off there for the last few days, and that's definitely helped. Otherwise, I just couldn't imagine trying to pack with a 3-year-old, just doing everything that you've done. But yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Did you use that as an opportunity to get rid of a lot of stuff?
Oh gosh, yeah. Yesterday I did a trip to our local tip, and there was literally just enough room for me to get into the driver's seat. It was jammed full of all sorts of stuff, and you're like, where has this been hiding for the last few years? But it's definitely a great opportunity just to get rid of a load of rubbish, and
I'm such a terrible hoarder. I hoard everything. Like, in terms of, let's say take photography gear as an example. Like, I will keep the boxes to everything.
So do I. I keep it for resale. I do. I've got boxes for all my audio gear, all my camera gear, everything like that. All of it. I've got mountains and mountains of them.
It takes up a considerable space in my attic, actually.
And I do sell stuff all the time.
Regularly. Yeah, you do. I never sell stuff. Rarely.
I only do it to fund something else normally. But otherwise, if I haven't used it for a year, it's going.
Have you ever sold a guitar?
No.
Yeah, no.
No, that's in a different category, I think, guitars.
I sold one guitar once when I was a kid, or like a teenager, and I sold it because it was a really crappy guitar, and I sold to somebody I really didn't like.
Oh, you are a treasure of a person.
I know, right?
Yeah, I sold all of my guitars to fund my camera kit.
Did you?
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
We got another fellow muso.
Oh yeah, he's way back, sort of before my life as a photographer. I was gigging musician and went to music college and did the rounds and did the wedding band scene and all that kind of stuff. And then just in the end, just was like, I've had enough.
I understand that. I'm still in that scene. So I'm in a function band every weekend. Well, not for the last 18 months, but it's been quite a challenging 18 months because with no gigs, no income from that. Yeah. And that made up, a portion of my monthly income. And we've just been starting to get back up to speed again last few weeks. Already first gig set a month ago when the original last lot of lockdown restrictions were due to end, and another month worth of cancellations came in as soon as it got extended. Never mind, we've talked that one to death. So, but
I know
we're getting there.
Yeah, it seems to be picking up again, though.
Yeah, we're getting there. It's looking really, really positive, and that's how we're taking it. We've used it as an opportunity to change things up and do things a slightly different way. Yeah, there we go.
So I think,
upwards.
I think I'm not too dissimilar from you, actually, Alex. I sort of unchained myself from the sort of gigging landscape when I went into like professional photography, as it were. And I have to say, it's actually been a massive weight off of my shoulders.
Yeah.
Not having to deal with that. I mean, you're still trying to get photography gigs in a weird way, but it's quite different from playing music. So
tell you what, and
it pays better.
Yes, the other thing. Yeah. I mean, you'll know from like doing sort of if you've gigged at a wedding, you'll be there till 1, 2 in the morning, and if it's a long way away, you've probably set off at 10 o'clock at night in the morning. You've got there early. You've spent all day there, and you're getting a fraction of what the photographer's getting, and they're leaving at like 10 o'clock at night, and you're just not even starting the second set, and you're like, I'm doing the wrong job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's let's not go down that because that's so depressing. Yeah, it really, really is.
But that's actually why I don't really shoot weddings. I mean, I shoot weddings when somebody asks me, maybe a friend or something, but I don't really shoot weddings. And mainly because I've played so many weddings in the past that I'm weddinged out, I think. That's usually the thing.
I actually can't stand them. Is that wrong?
Well, weddings.
I hate them now.
Well, I mean, I'm fascinated.
I've been to probably 1,000 now.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm fascinated when I see, wedding photography, such as, your photography, for example. And I see like the artistry and the craft that goes into creating those images, and then at the same time, I'm scared as hell with the responsibility that you have as a wedding photographer, because you're creating these photographs of somebody's like super special day, and it's just like I always say, this is my ultimate nightmare is like having to shoot a wedding on film.
Oh yeah.
It's like
no, I couldn't imagine going back to the old school wedding photographers and just having like pockets full of film and just no thank you.
And just not knowing whether you got the shot.
Yeah. That's at least now you can check the back of the camera and you can be like, yeah, didn't hit focus, let's try again.
Yeah.
In those days it's like fingers crossed a week later.
Yeah. Did you get the first kiss? I guess so.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
It wasn't in focus, but I got it.
Yeah, let's see.
It's where you don't get it. You phone up the groom, say, right, little issue. Didn't get that. Can I borrow you in your wedding gear? And can we go gate crash another wedding and you just plant one on the bride? And I'll get a shot of that so you can't see her face and we'll make up for it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the thing, with it's really impossible to recreate anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the style of wedding photography that I do is very much that sort of as it happens, and I never really sort of get involved or tell them what to do, because if something happens and I miss it, and then I say, "Oh, do it again." It won't be the same. It won't be natural. It will feel forced. So it's just constantly sort of like being in the zone and kind of feeling what's happening during the wedding, and the cameras are always on, and I'm sort of just ready to grab it and sort of take a shot. And after you've done it so many times, you start to kind of get a sort of sixth sense for when something's about to happen. And but yeah, I don't do any sort of posed stuff, and it's all natural light. And and I think that's why I think a lot of people get me to come and do their weddings, because they don't want that sort of traditional photography, and they might not particularly feel comfortable doing all the poses in front of the camera and going off for the couple's portraits with lights and gels and things like that. But they want good photography of their wedding, but they don't want the photographer to be sort of involved and sort of you know, controlling the day sort of thing. So I think that's why I really like doing the weddings, because you get to be involved with someone's special day and be absorbed in all the kind of the love and happiness that's going on, and all the funny stuff and everything like that. You're just a fly on the wall. And by the end of the evening, you know, everyone's had such a good day, everyone's in a good mood, and you've been involved in all of that, and you've got to experience it, and then you get to do it again and again and again. And it's just for me, I sort of I feed off of it, and it puts me in such a good mood when I sort of come home and I see the photos, and you know, if I've caught somebody doing something funny, or you know, a kid being cute or something like that. And for me, it's a really rewarding genre of photography.
And what you were saying there is about getting that sixth sense. It's, you only get that through time. You aren't born with that. You have to do it and do it and do it to build that that degree of anticipation as to when something's about to happen, because you're so used to being in and around the type of things that happen at weddings. Same is true of concert photography, right?
Yeah,
that you've done in the past. Is you've done it so much, you know when someone's probably going to do something.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, I always say this is like, for me, it was probably the easiest thing in the world, was to transition from being on stage to being off stage, because you know, you have such a good sense of what's about to go down on stage, that you know, it's relatively easy to sort of foresee where to be. You know, especially when you look at people performing on stage, you know, there's sort of the different categories of drummers and different categories of guitarists and bass players and lead singers. You know, some are very stationary and they're stuck in the same spot and it may be a little bit bouncy. Some don't move at all. Some take up the whole width and length of the stage. And so once you figured out what somebody's sort of performance personality is, then it's actually relatively easy to figure how, you know, if you've done it yourself. So yeah, I mean, I was performing on stage like for 25 years or something, you know, before I went into photography, and so it was relatively. So it was like a known environment for me to get into, and then, you know, and then I really transitioned from shooting music to like shooting normal people. I guess, you know, and then I was quite surprised that you could actually take a photo at f8. I remember thinking, f8? That's gonna be black where I'm from. Like, there's nothing in the picture at f8. You can't shoot anything at f8. Forget about it. You know. So anything past 2.8, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
You know? But so what made you, or what sort of what got you to decide that wedding photography was going to be the thing for you to get into?
I think when I sort of started photography and was getting into photography, I think like a lot of people, I tried all the genres, and I tried landscape photography and I was rubbish at it and I found it boring. The act of taking landscape photography I found boring. People who do it well it's phenomenal. I couldn't do it well, so I found it boring. And I tried wildlife photography, but I didn't have the patience for it. Like, I want my stuff to happen now, and I didn't want to sit for 3 hours in the wet to get a picture of a bird. But the people that do that well, their images are phenomenal, because they've got that skill and stuff. But yeah, I just tried loads of stuff. But the genre that I first had a real sort of connection with artistically and also emotionally was street photography. And I got really, really into street photography. And it was actually part of a sort of coping mechanism that at the time I was suffering really bad with depression. Street photography became sort of like a mindfulness approach to coping with what I was going through, because I was going outside, I was getting fresh air, and it was doing me a lot of good. And I was just I was taking more notice of the world around me. And I loved the concept of street photography and the fact that you can go to the same place 3 times in one day and something different's happening, and the light's different, and it could be raining in the morning and then it's sunny in the day. And, it's just, you didn't have to talk to anyone. You didn't have to organize anything. You just got onto the street and just took some photos. It was perfect for me at the time where I was with my mental health. And there was a point in the job that I was in at the time that they were basically laying a load of people off. So I was going to be made redundant. And loads of people sort of said, are you going to start working as a photographer? And I was like, don't know, maybe. I've not been doing it very long. I don't know how I could make money. And people were like, well, do you want to do wedding photography? And I immediately thought of traditional wedding photography. And I was like, no, that, it filled me with dread, having to sort of do big group poses and, trying to talk to, get people involved and stuff. I was like, where I was at the time, I was like, that's the last thing I want to do. But I went to the photography show and I saw a presentation by the documentary wedding photographer, Kevin Mullins. And he basically did this presentation all about this documentary approach to weddings. And it's street photography and documentary photography. They're so similar. They're really just divided that the fact that street photography is about a single image, whereas documentary photography is about a series of images. But the general sort of approach and techniques and philosophy are very, very much shared. So looking at his work and just seeing this whole kind of street documentary approach to wedding photography, capturing all that, the stories and emotions and all that kind of stuff, it was like, it really kind of appealed to me. And it seemed like a genuine sort of way that I could earn a living as a photographer, but with this sort of street documentary approach. So just kind of threw myself sort of feet first into it. And it's been a roller coaster, especially over the last couple of years, with everything going on. But it's definitely something that I think gives me the most reward in terms of creativity from photography. I've had 2 portrait studios over the last few years, sort of doing corporate headshots, and that started to become really apparent that was just purely about the money. There was nothing. I wasn't feeling creatively fulfilled from doing corporate headshots, and the people that I was photographing didn't care. If you've done corporate headshots, you sort of do it and you go, what do you think? Don't really care. Didn't want to have this done, but I've been made to do it. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you like it. Documentary weddings is that perfect balance of making a living from photography, but also being creatively rewarded from it.
I think that that style of wedding photography is, and has been for a while, the way photography should be done at weddings. Because those, I talk to couples and other people at weddings, obviously not the last 18 months, but all the time. And the younger generation, those in their 20s and those in their 30s who were getting married or are due to get married or are thinking about that they're going to get married in the future, they all say the same thing, almost without exception, that they want it to look natural, completely natural. No one seems to care about these forced posed family portraits or whatever like that. And it's not about that anymore. It just really isn't. Yes, I want to make sure I get a photo of my great gran and all of that. Absolutely. But we're not going to stand you all stiff and proper over by wherever it is. We're going to, where are you? You're in the room. You're near the band. You're near that. Great. We're going to get that. It's going to look natural. It's in the moment. And that's what I think people want from talking to them.
Yeah. And I sort of say to the couples that, you know, if you want some group shots, I'll do some group shots, but they're not going to be wow. You know, they'll be, you know, like I did the wedding a couple of weeks ago, and they wanted just a few traditional group shots. And I said, great, that's fine. But it'll be a case of, right, stand together, click, stand together, click, done. If you want other pictures during the day, just grab me. I'd sooner sort of have like the groom sort of say, I want a photo with my best man.
Yeah.
But sort of as I'm doing photos, sort of say, quick, take a picture, and, you know, they sort of get in an arm wrestle or a headlock or something like that. That's much more personal to their relationship than stood stiff as a board outside a church. So during a wedding, I'll have people come over and go, can you take a picture of us two, or can you take a picture of the three of us? And that, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, you know, click. But yeah, I try to avoid doing 100 different posed group shots of extended families and all that kind of stuff. But there are, and that's not to put a negative on traditional wedding photographers, and there are some amazing wedding photographers that can do bride and groom portraits that are just stunning with sort of off-camera flash and you know, but there are couples that want that, and there are couples that don't want that. So there's plenty of sort of, you know, options for everyone depending on what they want from their wedding. But the people that book me because they know that what they're going to get is just 100% natural photos.
And that's why that conversation up front when they're inquiring with you and having that you know, initial chat, senior images, that's why they've got in contact. But it's about being completely honest with them and saying, this is exactly what I do, and this is what I do really, really well. I could do some of this for you. It's not going to be as good as the rest of it. However, there are other guys who do that far, far better. If that's what you want, I'm not the photographer for you. It's not going to be good for them, and it's not going to be good for you either. And so that's just how you have to be. Don't just take the gig because you got a free date and you'd like the cash in. It's, you know, it's about getting up. Yeah, ideal client is the
I think what's interesting is, you know, I think in an industry like wedding photography, because there's so many wedding photographers out there, I think it is important to differentiate, you know, your own style from others around you. I think that's you know, that's definitely important. How did you first sort of establish yourself in the wedding photography world when you first started? Like from, you know, when you decided wedding photography was going to be the thing you're going to do, like how did you get started then?
So I think I was fortunate that I got a few family gigs, which helped to kind of start building portfolio. And then I got a few word of mouth gigs, and it then just started. And to be honest, a lot of my clients now are word of mouth from previous couples. I've done a few sort of Facebook campaigns and sort of had some work come through that, but it's mostly recommendations and word of mouth, because I think that is a much stronger way of being advertised when someone verbally recommends you, and says, this guy shot my wedding, I highly recommend you speak to him. That's going to have so much more weight to it than any award or anything like that. So yeah, most of my stuff now is just through sort of word of mouth and recommendations. And I don't do wedding fairs because I've done them when I was in a wedding band, and they're very tiring. But for some people that's like the perfect way for them to get work. But I guess because of the personal nature of this photography, the personal recommendations I think are the best way, and I'm not reliant on the wedding photography as my sole income. So one a month is kind of nice for me because I'm not oversaturating my photography with the wedding work. So when I do a wedding, I'm still sort of fresh and enjoying it. If I was doing, there was wedding photographer I was talking to a few years ago, and she'd done 66 weddings in a year, and that would have just absolutely burnt me out, and you'd fall out of love with doing that. So just doing the sort of one a month, two a month is just enough to kind of balance with life and stuff that you still kind of are passionate about it and you look forward to it. And but it's tough, and it's been tough. Not just the photography industry, but life for the last 18 months has been difficult for a lot of people. But along with a lot of things, the wedding industry has been a big impact. I was saying to you guys before we started, the wedding I photographed a couple of weeks ago was the first wedding I'd done since, I think, September 2019. So it's been nearly 2 years since I last did a wedding. And all of the weddings I had booked in for last year all got moved to this year, and then half of them have been moved to next year now. So it's just it's going to take a while to settle back down. But
how did it feel when you got that first gig back?
Oh, it was great. I was so looking forward to it, and sort of trying to just like, I was talking to my friend about it because he's a wedding photographer, and he's had a number this year. So, and I was sort of saying, I feel nervous. I feel like this is the first wedding I've ever shot. I'm checking my camera, making sure that everything's clean and my memory cards are formatted and my cameras are synced up on time. And I keep triple checking my bag because I can just see myself, because I haven't done it for so long. I get to a wedding, it's like, I forgot my 35mm. What am I going to do, sort of thing? I've only got an 85. Can I shoot an entire wedding with an 85? But once it just sort of got started again, it just sort of fell into place, and it was great. I absolutely loved it, and it was a great wedding to come back to as well, because the bride and groom they were such nice people. They were proper laid back. Everyone was laid back. And they were like, afterwards, they're like, grab some of the food, take a bottle of fizz with you when you go, and grab some. It was the perfect wedding to kind of get back into it. So, yeah, I've got a busy few months with weddings, but I'm really looking forward to it again.
That's why I take boxes and rucksacks to wedding gigs, just so I can load up on the food and the leftover drink and say, really? I can take a. All right, thank you very much.
It's funny you say that. We many years ago, when I was gigging in wedding bands, we did a corporate gig for the Young Farmers Association. And when we were packing up at the end, basically all of their alcohol was in a horse box around the back of the venue of where we were playing, which was right next to our cars. And some of it came home with us. But there was so much. But that was a nightmare gig, so we kind of earned it as well.
It reminds me of a story from 15 years ago for me, but I'm not going to say that one on air.
Oh,
no, can't share that one.
Oh, you have to now.
Nope. No, not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I used to like about weddings always was the food, usually. You know, that's always good.
I think I disagree.
Really?
You can't beat a hog roast.
Well, right. So
exactly.
Don't get me wrong. Love a hog roast. But so 2 or 3 years ago, it was very on trend to have a hog roast, and every single week, twice a week, it would be, oh yeah, we got hog roast, we got hog roast, we got hog. You get really sick of hog roast, or it's a buffet, or whatever it might be, and it's like, oh, I'm done. So I end up just bringing my own little thing of pasta half the time.
But I guess, I mean, I never played weddings. I don't think, I never played as many weddings as you play.
Yeah,
functions wise, but yeah.
Yeah, well, wedding food. Well, oh no! Once we got every so often they'll put aside whatever the guests are having.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
right. Every so often they'll do that, and it's not always, but once it was a very clearly an incredibly expensive wedding. It was in a castle, if I remember correctly, as well, and it was the nicest fillet steak I've ever had. And they just brought them all out and an extra one. Guess who had the extra one?
The cat.
Yes, no, that'll be me.
Yeah. They are the unicorns of weddings when they sort of go, oh yeah, we're just going to give you what everyone else is having. And you have like a 5-course meal. And it's just like, yeah, they're the special ones.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We'll be back.
Yeah, especially if you don't have to eat it in the broom cupboard. That always helps. I guess.
Yeah. We've been squirreled away in utility cupboards and kitchens and stuff before. And
if you could just go and eat in the toilet, that'd be great. Yeah. We don't want the guests to see you. Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
You've got you a stale ham sandwich and some crisps.
Yeah. Oh, God. That happened once. Like, yeah, we've got food for you. Oh, that's very kind. Thank you very much. Get there. And they've been to, you can go to Tesco or you can go to Sainsbury's or wherever and just get, packaged sandwiches. Yeah. That in itself would probably be bad enough to feed, They weren't that. They were low-end garage sandwiches.
Oh, no.
Right? And a case of very, very warm Coke.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We were.
No, we should be doing more. We should be doing more like food photography type of things.
What, like the packaged garage sandwiches?
So Nick and me did a shoot not too long ago in a like gastropub. What do you call that?
Yep,
restaurant type of thing. And the food that I brought out to be photographed was insane.
Mm-hmm.
It was so good. It was hard to actually photograph it.
As pub food, it was sensational.
Yeah, it was really good.
So, did you get to eat it at the end of the shoot?
No, we didn't, because by the end it was cold. Unfortunately, we just had like little tastes,
and we were rushed.
We were rushed. Yeah, it was a good thing. But yeah. See,
I haven't eaten dinner yet. Can we not talk about food?
Yeah, let's stop talking about food. We just end up at McDonald's again. That's just what's going to happen. Usually happens. Or pizza. Yep. That's the other thing.
Oh, man.
So, I mean, you mentioned earlier, street photography earlier, and how that's, how that sort of influenced your wedding style. And you also mentioned that you got into street photography initially, when you felt you needed to do something about your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So how did photography help you at that point?
Around about, God, I'm trying to work out how old I am now. Too old. About 8 years ago, I think it was. Right. At that particular time, I was struggling really, really badly with my mental health. I'd been diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety in my early 20s, which clinical depression is generally depression that's caused by a chemical imbalance. It's not a situational depression. So it's just like any sort of other illness. You can sort of take medication for it to kind of sort of counteract it. And have good and bad days and what have you. But it was, about 8 years ago, was having a particularly bad period of depression. And it was around the time that I was going to be made redundant from a job that was pretty much a major cause of the depression as well. Mm-hmm. So things were getting quite sort of quite full on, and there was a definite moment where I had to decide to do something to address this issue. Otherwise, it was going to end in a bad way. So rather than going down that route, I managed to talk to my wife and some family members, which was probably the best decision I ever made. And through talking with them, we managed to sort of address some of the things. And it was actually my wife who said, you need to find a new passion and a new creative outlet. I was completely burnt out with music, and I'd been doing that as a living and working in the video games industry, doing music and sound effects and all that kind of stuff. And I was just so done with it. But that had been a massive part of my life. And I was like, you need to find something. And I'd kind of always been interested in photography, not seriously, or I'd certainly never had any sort of professional kit or anything like that. So I was like, I'm going to start looking at photography as a hobby, just something new, and learning about it, and learning the history of it, and the techniques and the technical side of it, and all that kind of stuff. And that really gave me a new focus, and that really helped me address my depression, and gave me a new focus, a new goal. And like I was saying with the street photography, I didn't realize it at the time, but I tried therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, and people had talked about practicing mindfulness, and I was just like, I'm not interested in that kind of stuff. But I didn't realize that by going out and doing street photography, I was practicing mindfulness. And it without sort of being too cliched about it, it helped me see the world differently. And that really changed my outlook on life. And basically there would have been a very good chance I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't of taken up photography. It's through photography I've met some amazing people. I've made some amazing friends in the industry, especially lifelong friends. Big shout out to Tommy Reynolds. And I've got to work with some brands and do talks for people, and I've done talks at the photography show. And me and Tommy went to Ethiopia a few years ago, and I got to document some of the tribes down in South Ethiopia, which wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have started photography. So I have a lot to be thankful for because of photography. So, and also I've recently got approached by a charity in New York who they're a blood disorder charity, but they'd had several suicides in their charity group over the last 12 months. And they asked me to come, and I did a 3 dates of a workshop with these people to try and get them into photography, to see if it could give them the same thing it gave me. And they sent them out doing street photography and documentary photography around New York. And the feedback from that's been great. So thinking that possibly I can help other people that have been in a similar position to me by getting them interested in photography, and then photography helping them is incredibly rewarding. And I'm just grateful for all the opportunities that it's brought.
When I first read your story, I was really quite sort of struck by how similar your path into photography was from my own, because I first got into photography really in a not too dissimilar situation, in the sense that 2013 for me was like the annus horribilis, basically. The year where everything went pear-shaped. My dad died. My grandparents died. They were all living in Germany at the time, and I was like, I kept flying back to Germany, and during this year, it's like every time I was like going there for a funeral, and then my long-term relationship broke up, and it was just everything, like as if somebody had just hit the reset button and had just decided that my life could not carry on like this, any further. And so, I found myself in, living in a small place, and coming to terms with everything. And there was a point where I remember distinctly, there was a point where I thought I was starting to show symptoms of depression. And, and luckily, there was a moment where I kind of thought, right, I can see where this is heading. And, I sort of went, I need to make changes was my first instinct. And so, I remember I flew back to Germany, and I hung out with my mom, and my mom said, you've always liked taking pictures. You've always been super creative. Why don't you get yourself a really nice camera and see how that goes? Good. I mean, the other thing is, I'm like a third generation photographer. If you want, like my grandmother was a photographer, and then my dad was shooting. He wasn't a professional photographer, but he was shooting film. And so it was sort of like the logical choice. And I thought about it for about a second and went, okay, I've got literally nothing left to lose, and I might as well just give it a shot. And I remember like holding that camera in my hand and thinking, that is it. I'm going to get into this. And then that was a very, very slippery slope, especially for my bank account at that point. But it was literally, I got totally obsessed with that. And, the beautiful thing about it was I kind of thought, well, and much like yourself, I had a career in music, and I was really coming to the end of my tethers with that, because it was getting harder and harder to make a living. And, and I was running a company at a time, like a private music school. And I just decided I had to get rid of all of that. I had to literally wipe the slate clean and try something different, and do something different. And it was a complete and utter turning point, that's led to so many new, acquaintances and friendships and projects, and my whole life has completely changed. And eventually, I found my now wife, and got married, and all of that. Like my life now would be totally different, completely different, had my mom not said at the time, "Hey, how about a camera?" Literally, and it was a complete turning point. So it's really interesting, what I can do for you, and how that can really change your life, and and be extremely beneficial to your emotional state.
Yeah, and I can understand why. I mean, we were sort of joking before about how, I tried landscape photography, and just I was rubbish at it, and so I found it boring and stuff. But I can understand the appeal of landscape photography to those that are good at it. Of getting your kit ready, and maybe some coffee and some food, and getting up super early and going to this amazing place, and just sitting and waiting, and letting the sun come up, and being absorbed in that landscape, and them being rewarded with the perfect image. And I can totally understand why people do it. I'm rubbish at it. But whether it is landscape photography, or wildlife photography, or street photography, or documentary photography, or still life photography. I mean, I am my wife is a graphic designer, and I can't draw a stick man, but there's people out there that probably have that urge to be able to create beautiful still life paintings, but can't paint to save their lives. But they can do something similar with photography, and they can then get absorbed in that whole process of kind of shaping the light, and it's consuming, and quite often we need that to take us out, because we are absolutely inundated with bad news, social media, this pressure of the Instagram algorithms and things. Why aren't posts doing well? So it can just get overwhelming. So we need to kind of just consume ourselves in this sort of this creativity and this artistic outlet. And yeah, it's an extremely powerful medium. And I think and I've had a lot of people, after I've done talks and stuff, come and say, like you very much did, said, I started photography for that same reason. I needed something, I needed help, and it's helped me. So yeah, it's a great tool, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. One of the most amazing aspects about photography, just like any art form, for me, has always been, it's the same with music, it's always been the realization that you end up creating something out of nothing, like this thin air. Before you start making something, there's nothing there. And then, you put your mind to it. And before you know it, you've created something, whether that's a piece of music or, a photograph or a video, whatever, or a painting. You've just created something that just simply didn't exist in the world before you made it. And that's like, that process for me has always been, that's been the thing that's really interested me. And it's been the same in music, which is actually incidentally why I've always been extremely rubbish at playing a functions band. But that's why I spend my time, being a session musician in studios. That's what I love doing, because you rock up, you work on a track, you write potentially, and then you're involved in the creation process. And when it's done, it's done. Let's, and we can move on to the next thing and then create something new. And that's always been the interesting thing for me. And it's the same with, photography, in a way.
I worked out about myself quite a while ago, that I need to always be doing something creative, no matter what my day job might have been at the time, to have that outlet and that release. But on the side of that, I need to be doing something creative with somebody or other people, wherever possible, because doing it as a collaboration, my fulfillment out of what it is I'm doing escalates. It's tenfold what it would be if I was just doing it on my own. Yeah. That took me a long time to actually realize what was going on in my head. It was only when a few years before I left Amazon, I stopped playing in my functions band. Right, and that's fine. It's all good. But then over the last kind of 4 years, my role changed at work. It was a role I didn't ever really want to do, but I kind of had to do it. I started working from home a lot more for back issues, and I wasn't gigging either. And it kind of all came to a head that that's it. If I don't do something about this now, I'm going to completely implode or go down a very, very, very dark path, and it will be very difficult to recover from. So I quit my job, left. I started gigging again. I took a year out of doing any other work and just relaxed and just tried to focus on myself. And then I started teaching music. I then got back into doing video again properly, got into photography. That's how me and Kirsten met. And it has just snowballed from there, really, the last few years. And
it's funny how sometimes you have to just take your dramatic action. Like I sold my school for £1. Literally. I had to get rid of it. I knew it was a Friday. These things always happen on a Friday, really. Yeah. But I knew, I had to get rid of it. I had to just do something completely different. And I sold it for £1.
Yeah.
I found somebody who wanted to carry it on. There had to be a transaction. I think it was a £1 minimum. That was it. It's yours, see ya.
and perhaps you're similar to me, Kirsten. I play things safe most of the time, 99% of the time, because I like knowing, I like analyzing, and I like knowing what's what before I take action. But there's certain things where I can just keep that analyzing going on for weeks, months, years. And that's what I was doing. And sometimes it takes that moment. Yeah. Sometimes it takes that moment to go, you know what, shove it all away without being ridiculous. Got enough money in the bank to keep me going for a while. What's the worst that could happen? I have to go get another day job.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that really a big problem in a few months that I need to go and do that? No. Sod it. I'm going. This is for my own self. This is for myself now. If I don't sort this out, my mental health is just going to go to shit. And what's the point in that? Then I'm useless for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and again, it's like I say this every week, but you know, and we've talked about this many times on this podcast. But you know, even the sheer existence of this podcast is a total result of us realizing that we're going slightly insane. You know, and you know, at the very, very beginning of lockdown, and that we had to do something. We had to take action. We had to do something. We had to do something creative, first of all, and also something that gave us some structure, you know, through the week. Because that was, you know, do you remember that point where it was like, you know, you didn't even know what day it was anymore, and cared even less. You know, at one point, like, you know, and so. And really, this, you know, this has kept us going. You know, the sheer fact that we said in the beginning, you know, okay, we're going to record an episode every Monday, and then we release it every Thursday, and so every week has its structure, and you always have something to work towards. You know, and then it's, you know, and now we're still doing it, and that's kind of cool. You know, it started as something that was totally self-therapeutic, I think, and it's just turned into something that's, you know, that has just become part of our week, and it could have quite easily, it could have been over after 4 episodes.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're doing better than we're doing with the Tog Pod, because I think we've been doing that 2 years and we've done about 12 episodes. So we just there's 3 of us, so it's just trying to pin three working photographers down to do an episode, and one's in Newcastle and one's down in Kent, and I'm in Leicester, and so it has to all be done online. And we're just a bit rubbish with our podcast. So
what do you think? I mean, you know, the thing about frequency is we didn't know anything. We knew zero about how to podcast. Like, we didn't even know where podcasts even lived. You know, and who knows that? Like, how do you get into iTunes? I have no idea. Anyway, so, you know, and we just decided we're just going to figure it out along the way. And so, you know, a set of questions you can ask yourself at the beginning is like, how long should it be? What should we talk about? And how often should we make an episode? You know, and we'll just literally just picked, okay, well, I think in the beginning we were quite ambitious in that we said like, oh, it should be an hour long. That's never happened. Very rarely. No. But, you know, we went like, oh, well, I guess every week. Is that what you do? Like, every week? Okay, let's do that. You know, and
I think for people like us, it needed to be every week.
At the time,
if we said monthly, we would have got. Your diary fills up. You're not as disciplined with it. At least if you know it's every single week, they're close enough together to go, that's just a thing that I do.
Are they close enough together to leave the set up though?
No, absolutely not.
Damn it.
You might have to look into getting an actual podcast studio space hired out. And
when this podcast starts bringing in money, I may consider it. Until
you know you've made it when you make money from a podcast.
Yeah, well, there's that. Yeah, there's that. To all of our listeners, if you're interested, this podcast has literally made 0 sense since we started. Literally 0. But that's not why we're doing it. So.
We would like a dedicated room, please.
Yes, if you are interested in sponsoring the show, please get in touch. No, I mean, you know, it was literally, like I said, you know, it was for us. It was just simply finding something that would allow us to create something, I guess. And we just thought, well, you know, we're talking about photography every day, all day, pretty much anyway. So, you know, there must be some nerd out there who's interested in listening to that. So, you know, and that's been really good. It really did help us to get through the worst of the whole pandemic and the lockdown and everything else. For one, you know, like I say often, it gave us structure. But the other thing was also that it took, I think for me especially, I mean, it took my mind off of the really dark side of a pandemic, because it's easy to get drawn into the worrying part. What about our health? What about our jobs? What about our kids? Once you start going down that road, that's a slippery road, basically.
Yeah. Well, when lockdown kicked in, like my work just fell off a cliff. Literally on the 20 whatever it was of March last year, that was it. Just the diary just emptied. And my daughter was 18 months old at the time, and all the nurseries shut. But my wife could keep working because she was freelance designer. So it made complete sense for me to just become a full-time dad. And that's what I did. And it was quite a shock going from being, a working parent to a full-time parent overnight. And I could see it being, like you were saying, there's potential for it to have a real negative impact because so much bad stuff was going on. So I made myself do at least one documentary photo of that day with my daughter to give me a reason to pick up the camera. Because I probably, if I hadn't have done that, I probably wouldn't have picked up a camera for like 6 months. And I didn't want to lose that. And so the camera lived on the mantelpiece above the fire. And as we were doing stuff every day, I would aim to take one good storytelling documentary photo of what we did that day and what life was like. Because ultimately she's not going to remember that. She's only 18 months old, and we had to adapt because I couldn't take her to places because everywhere was shut. And then we had good days and we had bad days. And one of my favorite photos of her is she's lying on the sofa in a t-shirt and a nappy with one sock on with her head underneath a pillow. And it's like, that sums up lockdown for me. But I did it, and I ended up doing, I've not got round to it, but I'm going to produce a book for her. And it's basically 50 days of lockdown. And it's the first 50 days that we spent as a family sort of cocooned in our house. And again, if I hadn't have done that, there's a very good chance the world would have imploded and stuff. But giving myself a creative task every day really helped sort of maintain just some sort of positivity in what was just an absolute shit show of a year.
Yeah. I mean, I had a similar idea at the very, very, very beginning of lockdown, especially sort of in the days leading up to the first full-on lockdown. When sort of COVID numbers were going through the roof and everything was starting to look pretty abysmal. And I kind of thought, this is such a unique time in our life as a family that I need to find a way to document that somehow. Because, and of course, at the time, nobody knew how long this was going to last. Was it going to be a couple of weeks? Was it going to be 6 weeks, a couple of months? And I remember when this started in March, April, we had flights booked to see family in Canada in August. And I remember saying by August, come on, of course we're going, It's not going to be over by then. Yeah. When August came along, I was like, how ridiculous I thought it even was, And now we're a year later and I'm still not going because I still can't. But so, at the time I thought, I want to make almost like a vlog type of documentary type of video type of a thing. And so I decided that the first thing I would do would be, so I've got 3 kids. I would sit my wife and my kids down. I would film them and interview them about how they were feeling at the time. This is the very, very beginning of the very first lockdown. And so I wanted to capture what was going through their minds. The fears, the worries, the questions, because I thought it'd be interesting to have that as a reference point because you don't know how the land lies like 6 months down the line, whether we all gotten used to it or whatever. And so it'd be interesting to see what our initial starting position was, And so I figured probably, my worries might be different from my wife's, and they're certainly different from my teenage stepdaughter, and they're certainly different from my, at the time, 8-year-old daughter, And I shot those interviews. And I remember like sitting down the next day to edit them, and I couldn't, and so I thought about it for a few days, and I kind of thought, this is too hard. This is too hard. I can't do it. And those files have been sitting on my hard drive ever since.
Right.
Yeah, it was too horrible. I just couldn't, like, it was so, it was way too hard. So I couldn't bring myself to do it. And so, we did a little bit of a blog afterwards, like just my wife and I. And then we realized that it was so negative, that we figured, maybe this isn't the right thing for us to do. Maybe we need to like focus on something positive here, And so we sort of been that idea. But those I mean, and it may be interesting. Maybe in years to come, I might come back to that. But it became very clear that whereas I thought that us, as my wife and I, as adults, I thought like, okay, we're worrying about these things, blah blah. But when I realized that, even my 8-year-old daughter had a full grasp of the situation, I kind of thought, shit, okay, I'm gonna have to focus on cheering everyone up. This is not good for us actually doing this. So, so it was interesting, but it was doomed to fail at that point. And then we started to do lots of fun stuff, so it was different.
But it's interesting how, like, that kind of reaction to you doing the documentary it's like a default coping thing to the situation. I was reading, I can't remember the photographer's name, but his daughter, he basically documented his daughter's cancer journey, with it ending with her dying, and he photographed the whole journey, and it was clear that was how he was going to cope with it, because it takes you out of it on a personal level. But yeah, for some people, it's like the last thing I would want to do if I was in that situation is pick up a camera. But for some people, it's like it's the best way that they can still be involved, but can handle it a bit better. So yeah, I wonder if some of that was just it's sort of a way to still be involved, but put a little bit of distance between
arm's length
reality of the situation. But then when you actually come to watch it, you're just like, actually, I need to put the camera down, and that's the important thing, is knowing when to put the camera down as much as when
exactly.
To pick it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I just then I proceeded with annoying everyone by putting everyone in front of under some lights in front of the background, taking copious amounts of portraits, until everybody got annoyed with that. So, but
my situation was a bit different than what you guys were in, because I live on my own. I literally didn't leave the house for 3 months, pretty much, and saw almost nobody other than work that was happening over Zoom and stuff like that. And I'd jump on and see friends on Zoom and do all of that kind of stuff just to try and keep in contact. But because I literally had no human contact, it has a weird effect on you, and you don't even necessarily know it's happening. You suddenly kind of realize one day, my God, what has happened to me? It was months later that it only kind of clicked that I need to do something positive every day to kind of stop all of that creeping in again as the months and months went on. So my approach was different. I set myself a little mini project to leave the house every single day, whether it's during the day or at night, and go and take a photo or a handful of photos in the little village that I live in. That was it. And I would force myself to post that on Instagram. Just because, some friends and family that would see that, and they'd hold me accountable to doing it as well. So I'd make sure that I would go out and I would do that every single day, and I'd enjoy where I live, because where I live it's beautiful, right? It's a stunning little place, and why not go out and enjoy it? So that was my approach. That was my approach, and that month I did that, I felt 10 times better. As soon as I stopped doing that, didn't feel so good again.
Yeah.
Funny how it affects you, being on your own or not doing something creative, more to the point.
Yeah. But again, the camera giving you that tool to find a positive act, and sort of getting you to go out and engage with civilization after 3 months sort of entombed in your house. So it's such a powerful thing just to go out and take photos. And I think one of the critical things is to take the photos for you. If you go out and you're taking photos and you're constantly thinking, how will other people think of this image on Instagram? Is it going to get enough likes? Yeah. Should I do something else? Should I go for, teal and orange? Everything needs to be, this way, or whatever it is. If the more you think about how other people look at your photos, the less you'll enjoy it. But if you're going, and if you take a beautiful photo, that's for you. You don't have to put it out on social media. And
absolutely, I 100% agree with you. 100% agree with you. The reason I posted those particular ones every day, and it was always at about the same time as well, is that I knew friends and family would wait for that to arrive because they want to see it. They want to see that I've done it, that I'm going out and I've done what I'm doing, and they'd ping me, go, 6 o'clock. Come on, where is it? Where is it? I want to see it. Then they were just dying to see it. It was irrelevant about what they actually thought. I couldn't care less about what they actually thought about the photo.
And you'd probably be surprised how much it helped them as well, having that consistency. I mean, I did the same with the pictures I took of my daughter, and like her grandparents seeing these images every day because they weren't getting to see them. It helped them as well. And you just, like you say, you don't know how much of an impact it could have. But no, it's great listening to your stories and just sort of the.
Do you know what I'm finding most interesting here is that we've all got a little bit of a different story, but there's a similar thread in how not being creative or how being isolated and whatever that might be has a very negative impact on our lives and how we actually are. And we're three, unconnected people, so to speak. And we're all in the same world. So if 3 of us who have just got in a room together are feeling like that and have been feeling that way, I'm pretty sure most people out there are as well. And not enough people talk about it, or if they do, they're not as candid about it as they probably could be. Mm-hmm. And the more open you are about it, frankly, the better I feel when I talk about it. Yeah. I automatically feel better about it. And it's just, when was it? August, when we were about to go into lockdown 2, the second one.
That's October.
Yeah. We did a special episode where we got on some previous guests. In fact, wasn't Tommy and Hannah on that?
That's right.
Yeah. So Tommy and Hannah joined us on that one as well. We did. We spoke to all of them individually and then put it together as a separate video on as an episode of things that people can focus on and do to help them get through the next lockdown as a creative. Was the kind of general principle behind it, and that was probably my favorite thing that we've done. I
think there was at a time when we'd had the first lockdown and then things were opening up again throughout the summer, and I think in like July, August, I think most people's attitude was like, okay, well, it's getting better, so we're going to be out, like this light at the end of the tunnel, and we're coming out of it. And then of course when September hit and schools started up again, and then everything went back through the roof, and then it was like, okay, well, we're going to have another lockdown. And I think it's a bit of a shock to a lot of people, especially a lot of people that we spoke to at the time, and we kind of just figured, well, how about we'll just talk to, we'll get some people together, we'll talk about some tips as to how you can deal with this impending second lockdown, in terms of business and mentally and all the rest of it. If maybe we can draw on some lessons that we've learned from the first lockdown, and also, just by talking about it, maybe somebody's got some glorious idea that I hadn't thought of. And then when somebody goes like, oh yeah, I'm just going to do this, and you go, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. Maybe I should do the same thing. And so there was like sort of in the hope that there'd be some valuable information or tips, for listeners out there that, would help them get through the next phase of that. Of course, I mean, little did we know that we were going to go into lockdown number 3, which would last absolutely flipping forever.
Yeah, I think if past me had a conversation with present me about what lockdown was actually going to entail, I think I would have gone crazy a long, long time ago. It's certainly been unprecedented what's happened, and but we're still here. That's the main thing. Still helping and still sort of, doing our thing.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about that. Actually, we haven't mentioned your Portraits of Mental Health project yet. So that's, I was going to obviously talk to you about that. It's a very long introduction to that on here. But that's really, that's a really interesting portrait project that you started, of course, long before the pandemic actually hit.
Yeah, so I started it. So I had the idea for it in 2018, and I actually managed to get around to starting it in 2019, and actually managed to get a few portraits in like maybe 2 weeks before lockdown. And then the project's been absolutely shelved up until, we can do this again. But yeah, I was just having, just as we've sort of talked, just thinking about what photography has done for me. Was there something that I could do with photography to kind of give back and help other people? And so Portraits of Mental Health is basically, it's an ongoing project, and it's mixing the sort of the love of documentary photography, but also with portrait photography, to share the stories of these amazing people who have very bravely agreed to share their very personal stories with me, and also allow me to take their photo. Getting them to do one or the other is hard enough, but getting them to tell their story and take their portrait. But it's about trying to raise awareness of all the different types of mental health, because when people think mental health, they think depression, anxiety. That's like the go-to things. But it's so much more far-reaching than that. There's so many other areas. I mean, I can't list them all, but you've got PTSD, ADHD, there's body dysmorphia, there's eating disorders, there's with that there's anorexia, there's bipolar disorder, there's hundreds of different types of mental health issues that I think we are doing better as a society, I think, than we were 5 years ago. But I think there's still a lot more we can do to just be aware of this. But it's also about trying to break down the labels and the stereotypes of these mental health issues, and to kind of draw the attention to these people that if you were to look at their photo, you wouldn't know their mental health story. And that's the point. And it's hopefully eventually going to be a great collection of people from all sorts of different walks of life, different religions, cultures, places, to show that mental health, it affects people from everywhere. And it's really interesting hearing different people from different backgrounds and cultures about how their perhaps religion deals with mental health problems and how much it can actually be supportive. I did one of the people from the project, Mariam, talked about how Islam has been a big help for her. She's not a devout practicer, and but she takes what she needs from it. And it's eventually the goal would be to create enough images and stories to put together a book that could then be published and sold with the proceeds going to mental health charities. And that for me would be a complete full circle of the sort of photography journey for me, for what it gave me, to then using it to then give back to charity, to that then help other people. And if they use that then to maybe put cameras in people's hands to help them with their mental health would be amazing. So that eventually that's kind of the big ambition, but it's had a massive sort of smack to the sort of side of the road over the last 18 months because we've just not been able to get these people in the room. But I've got several brilliant people signed up. I'm trying to get some celebrities involved as well to kind of showcase that, like I say, it's, even though they're celebrities, it doesn't mean that everything's roses, and that people can share how they cope with it and how they deal with it. And then someone will listen and go, that story sounds just like me. That sounds like what I'm going through. I'm not alone. There are people who understand how I'm feeling, and I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to someone. I'm going to find someone to talk to and get help. And, just to really sort of just remove that whole sort of the stigma of it, and just kind of show that, we've all talked openly today about our own mental health journeys, and we're just three regular guys. So it shouldn't be a taboo subject. It certainly shouldn't be a taboo subject for men. And that's the thing that I found the most. It's been, men have been the least open to being involved with the project.
Yeah.
And that's a concern because statistically, suicide is the biggest killer of men under 40, more than anything else. And it's like, it's madness, because there's stuff that we can do that doesn't involve any sort of medical research and stuff to help these people just by talking and supporting them. It really is just as simple. Sometimes it's just kind of going, I've not heard from so-and-so for ages. He seemed a little bit off the other day. I'm going to give him a call. That call could save that person's life. It can be as simple as that, but there's more we can do. There really is. So I'm hoping that the project will just highlight these people and their amazing stories, and just how normal and regular people they are. And then hopefully that will inspire others and help others, and just make the world a better place.
I absolutely love the idea of this project, and to not only to share the stories of those people, but to combine that with a portrait which shows that, as you say, just you'd never know that there's a mental health story behind that face. It holds so much weight for me to show that side by side. But certainly over the last 18 months, just to tie in a few different things that you've said there, me and my friends, my male friends, have kind of naturally become more open about talking about this kind of thing. And we found out stuff about each other the last couple of years that perhaps we didn't know before. And it's been eye-opening, and it's given us a totally different understanding of each other and how to approach certain things with each of us as well. And we're just all gelled just even better than we ever did before, right? And a lot of that development has happened since COVID hit, right? So I guess one of my questions for you would be is, do you anticipate being able to get people involved actually slightly easier now, particularly men, given that I suspect if I and my friends have become slightly more open about talking about these type of things, given the situation last 18 months, most or other people out there have probably been very similar, hopefully. Do you think that's going to help kind of push your project along?
Do you know, that hadn't dawned on me at all, but I think it will. I think people will be more open about sharing their story now, especially men. And it's hopefully it will get more people involved.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I really
definitely.
do. Really, really do. Because this is something I'm really behind this. Like, this makes so much sense to me to do this. And, you know, certainly if there's anything that we can do to help support that project and, you know, drive it along or whatever we can do to help out, we'd absolutely be on board with that. Definitely.
I'm speaking for you here. But,
I know exactly what you'd say as well.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think the big thing for me, I've got really, really good support with Sony, who I've been working with sort of for a couple of years as one of their alpha creators, which is like their unofficial ambassadors. And they've been really, really good in giving me a platform to do talks and to sort of tap into this. The thing that I really, really want to do is connect with a charity. A big national charity, something like Mind or something along those lines that could then get behind the project. Because once they're behind the project, they've got doors they can open that I'm struggling to open. And having a charity like Mind or Mental Health Foundation or someone like that then adds weight and gravitas to the project, and people are then more likely to get involved. And potentially then that's when you can tap into people in the sort of the celebrity world, and once they're involved, that adds more weight and gravitas. And like I say, I'd love 100 portraits of and 100 stories of a real mix of people from all sorts of places, and famous people or regular people like you and I, and people who religious people, non-religious people. It's just a huge, just smorgasbord of just people, that just regular society that all share a common connection with having a mental health issue, but a story that goes with it. So yeah, that if you know anyone in Mind or any other charities or anything like that who kind of you can introduce me to, that would be great.
We'll do our best, but perhaps we've got someone listening who's involved. You never know.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. But it's definitely hopefully in the next 6 months we're going to sort of kickstart it again, and just keep driving it forward. And I keep sort of messaging people that want to be involved and have a story to share, and some of them like I say, just the fact they're prepared to share their story. I'm hopefully going to have father and daughter who were at the Ariana Grande Manchester bombing.
Oh, right.
And thankfully survived. But through their experience, both of them suffered with PTSD. So they've now set up a PTSD charity. And it's like, that's the kind of story. It's finding that positive in a negative environment and sort of thinking, what can I do? So yeah, there's loads of people and everyone's just got an amazing story. And it doesn't have to be a huge story. Just sharing an experience is just as powerful.
Do you intend to put a self-portrait and your story in there?
I thought about it, and I've chatted this over with a few people, and I've decided not to, because I don't want the project. It's about them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm the photographer, you know, but the stories are about them. And I think if I then put myself in that, it kind of, I don't know, the project, the book, everything, it needs to be about these people. But interestingly, talking with another photographer who's doing something similar, but on wet plate photography, which is like, wow, that's like black magic kind of photography. That potentially he's going to photograph me for his project, and I'm going to photograph him for my project. But when that happens, I don't know, with everything going on. But yeah, I'd really like to see this project sort of through to the end goal and get all these pictures out there.
Just out of interest, are you doing all the portraits in a similar style, or a straight same style, or are they just whatever kind of makes sense at the time?
Yeah, no, I kind of, again, what I kind of decided. So all the portraits are black and white, mainly because I love black and white photography. Mainly because it's sometimes color photography can be distracting from the subject that you're trying to convey.
Mm-hmm.
Black and white photography is also incredibly flattering, and I'm photographing people that are not well. So anything that I can do to obviously produce a complimentary portrait, because I want them to be happy with the portrait as well. If it's going to get shared in the book and what have you, I want them to be happy with it. And normally we do the photos after, so all of the photo shoots also have a video interview of them telling their story, and then I get them to write up their story themselves, because I think it's important that it's done in their words, so that when it's with their image in the book, what you're reading is their voice. It's not me interpreting it. So normally after that, there's normally been tears between them and me and the cameraman and what have you. So black and white photography, I think, is a great way of photographing them in an incredibly flattering way. But I also want the portraits to be consistent, so that there's no kind of unintentional favoritism or anyone perceived sort of favoritism. So everyone is shot in the same light. It's just single light in sort of butterfly setup. It's on a grey background, and they will all aesthetically look the same, so that people realize that these, we're all the same, really. It also makes it easier that we can shoot in pretty much any location with a pop-up background and a light. There's no retouching on the skin or anything like that, again, because some of the subjects we talk about is like body positivity and body dysmorphia. These are very much, apart from the aesthetic editing of the black and white and stuff like that, we don't do retouching, because we need to be promoting natural sort of looks and things like that. So yeah, the portrait is about the emotion and the character within it, as opposed to the technical side of it. And I didn't want people to get distracted and thinking, oh, how many lights has he used to get that? I can see a hair light and a rim light. Yeah, it's just like, no, just focus on this person, look at their eyes, tap into that emotional connection. That's what the portrait is about. and yeah, everyone will look the same in terms of images, but it will be their character and in that portrait that will separate them from each other.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, isn't it, that people could pick up a book like this and they go, well, wow, what stories, what fantastic photos. They won't necessarily pick up on your reasoning behind doing the photos in a certain way.
No,
but I think that's really important to hear, and for people to understand that you've chosen to do it in black and white. You've chosen not to retouch. You've chosen to do this, chosen to do that for very good, not just because that's how you like it to look. It's very, very particular. It's very intentional to do it that way to back up the message that you're trying to share. And again, absolutely love the idea of the project, and even more now.
Thank you.
You've described the idea about how you're going about the portraits as well.
Oh, thank you. No, I really appreciate it, and really appreciate getting to chat to you guys about it. And you know, whoever hears it, maybe someone will get involved or will check out the project, and they'll get something from just seeing these stories. And yeah, just the more we can kind of sort of push it out there and get people seeing it, the better, I think.
So if you do want to get involved in this project, then you can get in touch with us here at the Camera Shake Podcast, and we can forward it on to you. That'd be the easiest thing. So you can email camerashakepodcast@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Instagram, or send us a Facebook message, or tie a piece of paper to a pigeon's foot. If that's what you want to do.
That is my preferred way. Or
works for us.
They can go to portraitsofmentalhealth.co.uk, where they can see the portraits and the videos of the people we've shot so far, and message me this way. But a pigeon or a brick through the window with a note tied to it is fine as well.
Excellent. Do you have sort of an end date in mind with this project?
I think when we have enough content, I think I kind of plucked 100 out of the air, because it felt like if I could have 50 men and 50 women, or however we divide it up, that I think that's a nice number of people. We might not get to that. We might only get 40 or 50, or I don't know. But yeah, I guess until I'm at a point where I'm talking and working with a charity and a potential publisher, then we sort of will have a better idea. But in the meantime, like I say, I'm going to be updating the website every time there's a new portrait and story, and basically the content that is on that website will eventually become the book. So rather than sort of if people sort of think they've got to wait until this book's published, they can go on the website now and start looking at the portraits. And I try and sort of from every session, I normally work with the person, but I kind of sort of say, out of all the images we've done, for me, this is the one that I think best sort of portrays you. And they might agree or disagree, but we kind of work together, and then we decide on ultimately I want them to pick. I put my personal choice as just to help them, but I want them to pick the portrait they think represents them best. And then that's kind of like their main image. But then on the post on the website, I normally include sort of 3 or 4 other images from the session, because it's great seeing them go through, like, pulling funny faces and laughing. And I want people to look and go, oh, God, he looks happy. And it's like, yeah, people with depression can laugh and they can be happy, but it doesn't mean they're okay. I think one of the biggest people, I think, examples of that is like Robin Williams. Right. He when you look back now, you could think, well, maybe you could start to actually go, yeah, you can maybe see something. But his mask was comedy and humor and laughter and smiling and stuff like that. But he obviously had a lot more going on inside. And yeah, I think just because someone's laughing doesn't mean they're okay. And so I like to throw in some extra images of them just to kind of show them in different sort of things if I've caught them off guard or something like that.
So, Alex, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was an absolute education. It was super awesome to to listen to you talk about your past and your mental health and also your project. So, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be having you back sometime later on this year. Maybe that'd be amazing to talk to you about how you're progressing with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, guys. I've really, really enjoyed chatting with you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the project. And just hit me up whenever you need a guest. I'd love to come back, and like I say, we'll catch up in person as soon as we can.
Excellent. And at latest, we were just talking about this off air. We will be seeing each other at the photography show later on in September this year. So if you are in the UK and you feel ready to go out by September, come and hit us up at the photography show. We should be lingering or loitering for a good few days there. It should be good. And Alex is going to be there as well. And some of our former guests will be there. So I think Tommy's going to be there. And I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to meet quite a few people and have a chat, have a drink, and it'll be awesome. Absolutely. Now, that being said, we have come to the end of episode 64. That's the Camera Check podcast for you this week. Again, remember, if you are listening to our sultry voices on the audio version of this podcast, you do have the opportunity to head over to YouTube where you can see us in full Technicolor. And whilst you're there, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit that bell, leave us a comment. We got some really super awesome comments on last week's episode. That's always fun. But that being said, it's episode 64. See you next Thursday.